we're going to talk about the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine, and how it's affected their economies. This whole thing started back in 2014, when Russia decided to annex Crimea, which used to belong to Ukraine. And things have only gotten worse since then, with the conflict escalating into a full-blown war. Now, let's dive right in and talk about the economic consequences of this conflict, and the different strategies that have been used to deal with it. To put it bluntly, this whole thing has had a major impact on the economies of both countries. Businesses have shut down, people have lost their jobs, and consumer spending has gone way down. It's just a mess. The conflict has had a devastating effect on the economy in Ukraine. Since the conflict started, the nation's GDP has decreased significantly. According to the World Bank, the conflict is responsible for a loss of about 20% of the nation's GDP. The country has been severely affected by economic sanctions, which have made it more difficult for Ukrainian businesses to export their products and access foreign markets, in addition to the direct effects of the fighting. Subscribe if you want to explore the economy. Russia has also been severely impacted by the conflict. Energy and financial sectors in the nation have taken a significant hit, and their exports have drastically decreased. It has been more difficult for the Russian economy to bounce back from the effects of the conflict due to a combination of economic sanctions and low oil prices. According to some experts, the GDP of the nation has decreased by about 10% since the conflict started. To try and deal with all of this, both Ukraine and Russia have been hit with economic sanctions. The United States and the European Union have imposed a series of sanctions on Russia, targeting key sectors of the Russian economy, such as energy, finance, and defense. These sanctions have had a significant impact on the Russian economy, with some estimates suggesting that they have cost the country billions of dollars in lost exports and investment. Russian sanctions against Western nations, including a ban on food imports from the European Union, have been implemented in response to these sanctions. The Russian economy, which is now more dependent on pricey imports of food and other goods, has also suffered as a result, which has harmed European farmers as well. Meanwhile, Ukraine has also been hit with economic sanctions, although these have been less severe than those imposed on Russia. The European Union has imposed sanctions on a number of Ukrainian individuals and businesses, as well as on Russia's annexation of Crimea. Now, there have been various strategies used to try and resolve this conflict, including diplomatic efforts and more economic sanctions. But, honestly, I'm not sure how effective these strategies have been. It's hard to say. One thing that is clear, though, is that the conflict has had a huge impact on the tourism industry in both countries. Who wants to travel to a war zone, right? So, yeah, that's been a mess. The tourism sector has been particularly badly affected in Ukraine. Prior to the conflict, the country's Crimean Peninsula was a popular tourist destination. However, it is now largely cut off from the rest of Ukraine and has turned into a military zone. In addition, many tourists who might have visited Ukraine in the past have stayed away due to the fighting in eastern Ukraine. And, the international implications of this conflict are pretty concerning, too. Some experts think that it could lead to other conflicts around the world, which is definitely not good. For instance, some people believe that Russia is using its military intervention in Syria to deflect attention from its conflict with Ukraine and to strengthen its influence in the Middle East. Additionally, the conflict in Ukraine has sparked worries about the potential for additional military operations in countries like Iraq and Afghanistan. In summary, the conflict between Russia and Ukraine has significantly impacted the economies of both nations, as well as the travel and tourism sector in the broader geopolitical landscape. Although there are no simple solutions to this complicated problem, I think the best course of action is to continue diplomatic efforts and put an emphasis on minimizing the effects on innocent people and businesses. We can only hope that all parties involved can work towards a peaceful resolution of this conflict.